All right, if we're ready, we will call to order the April 1st, 2024 meeting of the Community Preservation Committee. Our first order of business is to review and approve the minutes from our March meeting. Are there any corrections, commentary, or any discussion about those minutes? I will say it was noted that it was difficult for folks not there to hear some of the public comments from the space that we used at the fire department. Maybe next time we're there, we could have another microphone for them to speak at, or one like a town meeting that we hand around or something.
Understood.
People were able to figure it out, but they had to rewind. So is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So move.
Second?
Second.
All in favor of approving the minutes from the March 28th meeting? March meeting.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstaining.
One abstention, and the minutes are approved. The next order of business is to review and sign bills. Do we have any bills, Chris?
No bills this evening.
All right, so we will move on. The next are discussion items. The first is for the May town meeting. We have at the top of the stack of documents Chris has passed out are the warrant articles regarding the projects that we approved at our last two meetings. If you want to take a minute and look at those, they should reflect the motions as we presented them at the last meeting, as we approved them.
In Article 39, we didn't discuss at the last meeting.
It was 2 meetings ago.
Okay.
Yep. So, and actually, there is, the first article, Article 34, is actually our next item to discuss. Perhaps we should discuss that before we go further with all of them. Chris, did you have an update for everyone on that?
Yeah, so I do. So as those who've been following may be aware, so this, on my recommendation, the applicant pursued both the CPC article as well as funding through the Affordable Housing Trust. That was my recommendation in terms of keeping those in tandem, having both opportunities to potentially fund this project. The Affordable Housing Trust having the benefit of potentially being able to fund it sooner and not necessarily needing town meeting vote, whereas CPC did. But if the Affordable Housing Trust application was unsuccessful, I didn't want to belabor the timeline for CPC review to be on the town meeting warrant. So it was my recommendation that they pursued both at the same time. This request was successful in receiving funding from the Affordable Housing Trust. And so at town meeting, and we can provide a similar recommendation from the committee, but it'd be my recommendation that we pass over this article. Obviously, the select board and FinCom during those presentations, they did discuss this matter, and it was indicated that that's the intention, is to pass over this article, as they've already received the funding from the trust, and so able to pursue this project. So certainly in favor of this project, and by no means wanted to inhibit it, and that was the intent, was to pursue this in tandem and give it the best chance of receiving funding in a timely manner.
Yes.
Do you agree? Any questions?
I think it's great that they gave funding, and I've talked to, since the last meeting I was at, 3 of the 4 members of Affordable Trust, and I'm pleased to say that they are really in full support of working with us on housing. I was pretty harsh in our January meeting, but since then, I really do feel like we can work together. So we were pleased they approved this. The Housing Authority has not met since they approved it. Our next meeting's next Tuesday, but I can't imagine that we would object, because the benefit, as Chris pointed out, is we would get it sooner. So I'm not sure when, but the sooner the better. And why wait till July to start a project that we could potentially start as early as next week? So we're in favor of using the Affordable Housing Trust monies for this project. Unofficially, the board does have to vote.
Yes,
Follow up.
yes.
Okay. So my understanding is in Shrewsbury, we don't have the ability to pass over articles. So it sounds like we've already made a recommendation to move the project forward, but we're gonna comment at town meeting to say, we're asking you to vote no on this project because it's already funded. Right, so it's a vote is forced to be placed because we can't pass over articles, to my understanding in
So,
Shrewsbury.
so I can work with town council on the logistics at town meeting. My understanding, if it's not a passover, then it would be a recommend to defeat.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I think it is a logistical matter with both funding sources, although that wouldn't be clean. So even if town meeting voted to do this article, we would allocate it, but obviously it's all contingent on a funding agreement. So at that point, what I would do is I would recommend that that we enter into a funding agreement that should Affordable Housing Trust, fail to provide the funds, that, it's contingent upon that they expend the Affordable Housing Trust funds first. And I think that would be
So
amenable.
there's no opportunity for us to recall or rescind our original vote on that if we wanted to?
It would be, I believe it would be, again, I would want to talk with town council on the logistics, but I think it would be a recommendation to defeat the article
Is my-
if we can't pass over it.
My question is largely because the moderator, at least in our first year, showed an interest in bundling all of the CPC articles together. And if they're all bundled together, there may be some confusion among town meeting members of if they're voting to defeat one, voting to defeat all.
Yeah, again, I think I can work with town council and the town moderator to make sure that's clear if we bundle the remaining articles and pull this one out
Okay.
to take, specialized action. I think that we would be able to make that clear at town meeting.
We want the housing authority to get that money and the feasibility study as soon as they possibly can. We just don't want you to get it twice.
That's fine. We don't want it twice. We only want it once.
I guess, so when you have your next meeting, if I understand correctly, you'll vote to accept the state money.
The Affordable Housing Trust money,
Yeah.
yes.
So once that's accepted, you won't need this money. Technically,
Yes.
today you still need it because
Yes,
you
absolutely.
haven't accepted it. Okay.
Right.
I think we should hold this in advance until next month. I, having been on the finance committee, when things like this came up, we would usually revote. If we had voted to accept something, we would then revote to say we want to turn it down. I think the selectmen have done that in the past also. You may want to check, but I think we may have to take a vote in the next meeting
On that one
on
particular
this one to
article.
say we want to turn it down.
That would make sense. And like I said, the
All right.
fail-safe is the funding agreement.
Because right now, our recommendation is to accept it. That's what would go in the town warrant that gets mailed to everybody, is that we're recommending it.
Right, and so ultimately, there's a logistical matter due to my recommendation, and I think what it is, we're still waiting for the formal vote of the Shrewsbury Housing Authority before we take action on the remaining items
Right.
to rectify that, so.
So any vote or discussion we have about the remaining articles, we'll keep Article 34, the Elizabeth Street feasibility study, out of that discussion. So are there comments, questions about the rest of the warrant articles? They should reflect what we voted on over the last two meetings, but if anyone sees anything that seems out of order, let's let Chris know. Yes. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay, so it's hard to look at the articles without looking at the budget. And this is a comment that I made last meeting, suggesting that in between meetings to take a look at, did we allocate, because we didn't have the budget available at the last meeting, when we took a vote on which funding source to take these projects from, is there enough funds in that reserve? Otherwise, you have to go to the general bucket within the CPA monies. So as illustrated in the budget, when we advance to that, you'll see there's already a negative balance here proposed for historic preservation, which clearly indicates to me that we have to change the language for the gravestone project and the District 5 project to say, monies from the Historic Preservation Reserve and the General Budget Reserve, or else, just so we cover, so they can tap into both pots.
Right, I think that's something, when we get to the budget section, reviewing and approving that, I'm happy to speak to how that works with the negative balance. I mean, we can cover it now if you want, but,
Yeah.
so essentially, without going too deep into the budget, so there is that, the negative balance in terms of the allocations for, the Historic Resources Reserve. Technically, typically what you want to do is you want to expend all of the money out of that reserve before you tap in the fund, or the general fund. So what typically, what you would do is you would have a motion that would vote to expend the majority of those funds out of the Historical Resources Reserve, with this remaining approximately 42,000 balance out of the general fund. A little bit of the difficulty there is these are all based on estimates. We don't actually know FY25 exactly how much will be allocated. We have a rough guess, and we've budgeted conservatively. In terms of the actual adjustment of the language, given the warrant has already been signed, I did email off to town council this afternoon to try and discuss with him early next week what the path forward in rectifying that would be. And so in a cursory review of the CPC guidelines and those documentations, there's nothing that expressly says that we can't, fund in a deficit, and that's actually a lot of times done. You'll fund in a deficit knowing that you'll recoup that next year. There's also, that's based on all of the allocations being expended. As we'll talk about in project updates, there's a number of projects that have not yet expended any funds, and they have a 2-year time frame with potential to extend that window out. So ultimately, it may be a moot point. We do want to make sure that we do have the funds appropriately allocated. So that's where I think having town council kind of give us the guidance of how we can amend the vote to allocate it that way appropriately would be wise.
So what you're saying is that they will ask for money from that 205,000 over a period of time, and we'll be getting more funds in, and it will be covered.
Right, I mean, that's how it would work logistically in terms of votes and the actual allocations. I want to work with town council to make sure. Really what it would be is it would be the gravestone project likely, because that's the 200,000 out of that account, and we'll just have to figure out with that 42,000 how that gets allocated, and how we amend the allocation from the warrant, how that works. But again, I want town council to opine
Okay.
on how that works, because that's a little bit above my.
And I had a very specific point that I had a question about, because as I remember, for the pergola at Prospect Park, we had allocated 85,000 to that, but that included plans for documents for restoration, which is not going to happen through CPA. And the balance that's been expended looks like 57,000 to date. So there should be some credit from that, 30,000 or 28,000, something like that, that will come back into the account. Yes?
Right, and so that's so in terms of looking at the FY24 projected budget, which is what figures transfer over to this FY25, the actuals are very different because some projects have expended money, some haven't. And again, when we get in the project updates, that'll be something we'll want to look at, is which ones are closing out with funds to be returned back. That may cover the 42,000, but we'll have to look at that. And in terms of how that affects the recommendation for the warrant, again, that's where town meeting, or town council will be able to provide a little bit better guidance on if we need to amend that or how.
For our next meeting, could you provide us with the actuals versus budget? Or
Yeah, I
is
can
there a
give-
format, John, that you think would be appropriate so that we could see where we are in real time as well as where we're projected to be?
We can give the updated actuals as of that date. But again, it's just like, so we're actually still waiting on an allocation from the state of our funds, so.
FY '25.
For FY '25, yeah. So I mean, so that's where it gets.
There's already a target percentage that
Right.
has been provided. so
I
we can go with
guess,
that.
in terms of, just listening to the conversation, in terms of the historic preservation going over budget, based on these votes, if this doesn't go into effect until FY '25, because the FY '25, once the FY '25 number rolls in, we should have more than enough money.
No, that's not what is shown here. This is already baked in. The 10% new fiscal year allocation of 102,000 gives you 168, and then the 205 and the plus 5 is gonna get you over. So that 42 is
What
net.
number you talking about?
It's on the budget. We haven't pulled it up yet in conversing. I mean, I jumped to that because it's relative to the article conversation. I just commented
Yeah, but-
last year, 2 years ago, when we did the articles, we explicitly called out whether we were getting it from, we would say, with language, if we're getting it from the historic preservation reserve, or the general budget reserve, or the unbudgeted reserve.
I guess, well,
But they didn't get into like the amounts specifically. We just said, okay, we're authorizing to go this route. And maybe the route, as you just discussed, sounds like, I mean, I'll tell you personally, it doesn't feel right to say that we can go, show a negative balance.
well,
But I mean, I don't know, that's the legalese around that. However, is it simply, can we just simply say that we'll take it from this budget until it's exhausted and tap into the general budget reserve?
Right, and that's why I want to.
The positive numbers.
And that's why I want to make sure that logistically we're organizing that. And that's where I want town council to opine on that.
I would
rather than
assume,
me trying to answer that without the qualifications.
I would presume that if we wanted to move money from the general to the historic, we would have to vote on it. But we can do that in the June meeting even. If, once he finished, this schedule, I think, is fine for telling us how much money we've got going forward. He's just gonna plug in a couple of numbers in here. And if it comes up short, then we just transfer the money.
No, that's an action of town meeting.
The 65%? We can't do
Just-
that?
Isn't there an article here that specifies the
Article
10,
30.
10,
Town meeting?
yeah, this one,
is
33.
Town meeting's rules to approve or not the articles as presented and to overall vote on our budget.
I thought,
But does town meeting vote to expend which I think we should be careful to call it the CPC general fund, so people don't think we're talking about the municipal general fund,
All right.
since our money never goes into that. But I'm wondering, or should the warrant articles
I think the
in the
town,
future be
the town
worded
meeting
that it's
votes
either?
on the 5, 10, 10, 10, 65, right? That they basically say, yeah, we're gonna accept the money to spend. I don't think we need to go back to the town meeting to vote to move the 65% excess into one of the 10% categories. They're voting, if they're approving this, by virtue of approving this, they're saying, go ahead and spend the money.
And
that's-
CPC has the
So-
money,
I
it's
don't
just
think of that.
currently it's not allocated to a particular area. We
Right.
intentionally left the CPC general fund larger so that it was unrestricted for whatever
So-
needs or
So again,
priorities are
I
identified.
wanted to present on,
here.
this is more of a budget item than the warrant article item, and that's why I'm happy to
See-
kind of discuss that at that time, but I think it's important to talk about,
I'll look at it
you
in
know,
a
the
different way.
project updates where we are and that, and then we can run through the budget and how that all works. And again, ultimately, we're gonna need town council rather than kind of running through this theoretically to opine on how that works with that transferring of money, because
I would look at it a different way then. Article 36 cannot be approved by the town meeting because we have insufficient funds. If you're looking at it the way you're looking at it, Jason, we can't approve this at the town meeting because we don't have sufficient funds in the historical account to spend it. We would have to get them to move the funds first before we could spend it. And I don't think that's the intent, I guess. We go into intent here, and maybe to talk to them. I'm under the intent that we got $2 million to spend. The allocation is just the minimum. We can't use that money for something else. But in the general fund, we can use the money for whatever we want,
That's how I.
without
understood it
having
as
to go
well.
back and move money from account A to B, from general into historic. We don't have to get approval from the town meeting to do that, because they've already approved to do it. By telling us to spend this $200,000, they're approving to spend it in the historic category.
They're not saying approving the spend. The only spend is the articles. The only category, the only bucket that you can spend without going to town meeting is the administrative fund. Is the CPC's administrative fund that we go through the line item here saying, review and sign bills, and we approve those bills. That's the only one that we can unilaterally as a committee say we accept this charge or we incur that charge. The other monies here, town meeting will say, move the monies to, we are asking them to move monies into these allocations. Town meeting can say, you know what, CPC,
Time out.
you haven't done enough, you haven't put enough money
We're
into
not asking
affordable
them.
housing.
We're not asking them to move money.
No, it's the allocation.
That's right.
Of the
We're setting the
revenue.
allocation,
These revenues, yes,
revenues.
yes.
but the
but
allocation is
We can't
nothing more,
move, we cannot move monies from one
the
bucket to
allocation
another.
is nothing more than a minimum.
So again, rather than discussing this back and forth, I really think town council needs to tell us the path forward in terms of that. I think that's ultimately it, and I'm happy to talk about it more in the budget, but I think we're very much getting off track and getting into theoreticals here. I mean, and technical details that I think
Can we
are
take
better,
action?
better,
Can't take
I
action.
think,
On the warrant articles without solving that question.
I'm not comfortable voting on it. I will say no to the historic preservation, and District 5. Because I believe this language here, like, well, first of all, we already said yes to this, right? So this is kind of like an oddity, like, we already said yes to these things, that's why it's on the warrant. So,
right.
what are we
This is-
technically
this is-
reviewing right now?
This is an
It's-
update of the warrant as it was signed, and what you recommended to town meeting,
We
so.
certainly-
So that's why I'm saying, I think really when we talk about budget and how we go back to this, now that it's been signed and recommended to town meeting, I think, again, town council needs to opine on how we clarify that, whether it's, I don't know,
It's not unprecedented that substitute motions are, when town meeting members check in, they're handed, these are the replacements for numbers 34 through 39. Would it solve the issue if these were to stay instead of $7,000 from the Community Preservation Community Housing Reserve? If it were to say $7,000 from the Community Preservation Community Housing Reserve or CPC General Fund as needed?
I
If
think
we
you're
were
on
to
a different
change the
article.
language of each of those articles and add and/or the Community Preservation General Funds as needed, would that allay your concerns with
That's,
that
that's what I
past
commented,
muster with town
but
council?
I'm not town council, so I can't answer that, but that's what I want to get.
Is if that were the
Clarification on.
case, we could simply edit these, vote on them with changed language, and then that could be one of the colored pieces of paper waiting for town meeting members when they check in at town meeting.
or you're advising not to make any edits until we have information from town council.
Correct.
So,
Has the town warrant gone to press?
Yes.
It has.
Well, it's been signed.
The book the green book or whatever we're gonna get, that's already been sent to the press.
I don't know. I know it's been signed, so I don't know if it's actually been printed.
I mean, I like your comment, okay, to say either from the Historic Commission or if needed from the general fund. I mean, if it hasn't gone to press, we could vote on that and then stick it in there.
it's
Should
already
it be
signed.
It's already signed.
What's already,
And these are part of our growing pains.
The-
The
the
first time
selectmen-
around, we didn't have no monies had been expended. Our budget was what we had, so this is part of our learning process in year two.
Whatever.
But if there's a way to light a fire under town council to have an answer, and if we can do that by our next meeting, so that we could vote on inserting that clause or whatever town council says is appropriate, we can move that to our May agenda, because we will be meeting before town meeting. So a sheet of substitute articles with slightly edited language could be made available before town meeting begins.
yeah.
Might be all that we can do tonight, based on the questions we can't get answers to yet. So, should we move to part 3 of those discussion items of presentation, development, and logistics? Which I think will be, Chris, last year you presented. Do you want to lead us in this part of the conversation?
Yeah, so from the presentation, so I'm happy to develop a presentation, which I'll have in draft form, prior to the meeting next week. And I'll be forwarding that around to the committee well in advance of their next meeting. Looking for feedback. I can kind of amend that as I get individual feedback from members. So we'll have a pretty clear idea of the slides that we'll put forward. One of the comments that we received at last town meeting, for those who were in attendance and you remember, was they did want more photos of projects. And so
If only we had some.
So that'll be something that'll be going around, trying to get photos of the areas, making sure that we have really clear depictions of what the projects are, where we can, and giving some of that background. I'll also try to have some photos in terms of for our kind of original, we typically go through the budget and our kind of year in review as well, very briefly. So I'll have some photos of the project updates that we have as well for those slides. I know town meeting, they do a lot of the formatting with that, so it's going to be very rough. I'll just probably be putting up photos for each one and let them work the actual formatting, so it's not going to look the prettiest. But that'll be that'll be something that you'll be able to kind of follow along with and say, yeah, this photo's good, or we need I have a better one, things like that. So I'll be happy to put together those presentation slides and receive feedback through the next couple weeks.
Okay, just you're talking about, for instance, with our wheelchair accessible trail. If you take a picture of the site, you're just going to get a piece of forest, basically. It's not very enlightening. When I had to send pictures for the Mass Trails application, I took pictures, and one piece of forest looks much like the rest. Is that what you want? Because I can provide you those pictures right now.
Well, I think so. For some of these projects, I think the photos that would be most useful would, even just showing the forest, because we are talking about ADA accessibility. I think there's some value there. Probably of more value would be a location. I think a lot of people were trying to figure out where exactly is this project, and so we'll use a Google Maps or maybe a nicer version of an aerial view of the town, showing where each project is with some
Okay.
call outs for people to say this street or that street.
And perhaps even a diagram of the trail design, not the design, but, the location showing from the parking area to the landmark. Did you have that sort of diagram for the Trails grant?
Yes, there was a engineering drawing.
Perfect.
I don't know how close to, how the finished product it'll be, but it was,
Close enough.
But it's
You know,
close
yeah,
enough
close
that
enough.
that it will give people an idea.
yeah.
And I think that's what folks are asking for.
Well, and if anybody's seen the old Girl Scout ruins, they would know that that would be the, the,
And do you have a
Destinations.
picture of those?
oh, yeah.
Okay. Make sure Chris has those.
Okay, sure. And the muddy hole that is the current parking area, it is so bad looking.
Mud is progress, it's okay.
I know, yeah, it's bare ground, I guess. Okay,
Is there anything else you need from us for that presentation? Or we can talk about it more at our next meeting, but, or if anyone else has photos or anything, they should get those to Chris as soon as possible.
Question.
Yes.
Has the public notice gone to the paper?
For May,
Yes.
yes, it should
That's
have
the
been
one
posted.
required legal notice.
Yeah, that should have gone out, well, it should have gone to the paper Friday to be run next Friday.
Excellent.
now, do you have to send it out twice, or is it just once?
Twice, 2 weeks, or 2 weeks in advance, and then the week before that.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Right, that's all we have about the town meeting that we can work with today. Yes?
Sorry, question about that presentation. How much time are you looking to give to the CP for this presentation?
At town meeting? We're talking about the
sorry.
town
Sorry
meeting
about that.
presentation.
Sorry about that. Yes,
Yeah,
which is
that
very
one's
similar.
down there.
Yep.
Wait
Gotcha.
until we get there.
Got it. Sorry. So my question about the legal notice is actually about the other way. Sorry about that. Jumped the gun.
Jason is very much looking forward to the May meeting.
Yes.
Aren't we all?
For
So
the
much
town
information's coming.
meeting presentation, many of us are town meeting members. We'll certainly be there if you need us, want us to waive or reinforcements, but otherwise, you've got it. Let us know if you need something.
Thank you. I'm always happy to see the support in the case that I can't answer a curveball question, but I'll be very prepared to answer what I can. So.
Okay. So next is the Shrewsbury Fire Department has received the antique engine. It is here in town, and they have invited us to come visit and see it and hear more about where the project is. They had invited us to meet at the fire department, but we didn't really have enough time to figure out the logistics of a public meeting, which is possible, but we just didn't have time. So did you have dates in mind, or should we think of, we have too much going on at our May meeting with the public joining us. We could visit informally, or what do you think, Chris?
So they said that they're happy to kind of coordinate any date that works for our schedules. What I'd like to do is what we've done in similar circumstances, is to post an agenda for an informal meeting. It's a one-item agenda saying, meet with fire department to view the fire engine and probably take photos or something of that nature. And what that does, that allows us to meet. By no means is it a real formal meeting that you have to open it or anything, but it lets the public know that you are meeting. You'll likely have a quorum, but no business is taking place. So it meets the muster of the open meeting law, allows you to meet. So if there's a date that works for everyone, I'm happy to post so we can all meet at the same time and get a group photo with the engine. I'm happy to coordinate that.
Or would it make sense for our June date to start a half hour early on the other side of the parking lot? We start there, visit, and then come in here and begin our next meeting?
That could also be an option.
Where is the truck?
It's in the, oh,
I believe it's right over at the fire
I believe it's in the
headquarters.
fire department.
Fire or police?
Headquarters, sorry.
Fire.
Is that the fire station?
Yes,
I believe so.
Is that
In the
a-
center of town?
yes,
They,
But we're-
they have a meeting room there, should we just?
they
meet there?
do.
So, yeah, they offered to use it, well, they offered for this meeting to be held there, but, yeah, as you mentioned, the
We didn't have quite enough
logistics, I
time.
was,
I mean, I don't know if we could, perhaps you could inquire with Shrewsbury Media Connection if we could do it there. We could hold our meeting there as well. There is a meeting room. Is that the preference of this body, that we try to just simply hold the meeting there if the room is free and if the logistics of properly recording or broadcasting the meeting is possible?
Yes, but I thought, you positive it's in this fire station, not the other one by
Instead of us
Tavern?
at headquarters.
Because that was the one, park it down where the ambulance used to be.
Maybe they're willing to move it for us, but they said it was at headquarters and offered
Okay.
to host a meeting.
Sounds good.
I think,
To tell you the truth, I would prefer to have this as a freestanding meeting and not worry about our June meeting. I think it would be a lot easier to do it that way. That way we don't have to rush around and don't have to worry about where we are and end up having a meeting in a, less than optimal setting. But, I'll go with whatever the group decides.
Well, what do you folks think on this side of the room?
I like that idea. I guess I'm retired, so I'm open. You want to meet at noontime for lunch? I'll meet, wherever you, when and wherever, I'll be there, because I'd like to see this thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you people are somewhat more constrained in terms of when you're available. I can make myself available. So I'll be easy on this one.
We could ask them, or could reply to the nice invitation and ask for some dates between now and,
Yeah. I
what
mean,
their next available date is.
For a Saturday morning,
Is there a preference for
Yeah.
day of the week or time of day?
not for me.
No, I'm like John, I'm retired.
I'd rather do it.
Not you two, the rest of you. Is there a preference for
Eve-
day of the week
evening.
or time of day? Evening.
Late afternoon or evening would be easiest from a working standpoint for me.
And I would rather not do evening. I'd rather do late afternoon, sort of end of day. Saturdays aren't great for me,
Right.
work.
Friday afternoon.
Yeah, Friday afternoon can
Afternoon.
work. I know.
Friday afternoon?
Can ask them that. I will ask what is available, and we will communicate that to you as quickly as we can.
And I will say that the meeting room at the fire department headquarters, you are likely to be interrupted by calls.
Yeah, it's very loud,
Hmm.
as it should be, because it's a fire station.
Yes, absolutely.
I think the only downside to that is I don't think we would be recorded either, if that makes a big
I
deal.
suspect we could be recorded, but I don't know that
Not
we could
live.
be broadcast. It would have to be a delayed broadcast.
Having been on the finance committee, we did meet there once upon a time. It was way before this. I was on the finance committee going back to '07 maybe, so 8, 9, early in my days, I know we had a meeting there. I do remember that, and yeah, there were some interruptions.
All right, well, we will look for a late Friday afternoon, see what's available. And that way, all three of the people that regularly watch our meeting won't miss us.
I don't know,
And we're very grateful for anyone that does. All right, next on the agenda is project updates.
sorry, before we move on, I just did want to mention, for those eager to go see it, prior to a group meeting, individually, feel free to reach out and coordinate a visit if you wanted to go sooner. That's totally fine as well.
Awesome, thank you.
Project updates, that is this sheet, Chris, that you
It is.
put into the project. Is there anything you'd like to say about that?
No, so what I did is it's a little rough right now, but I developed kind of, as we asked for project updates, just a kind of running list of responses that we've gotten back with the date. It gives a brief update on each of the projects. As I mentioned earlier, if you go through, you'll see that, many of them they're in varying stages of being complete, or work that is scheduled to be done. Some of them have had a vast majority of their funding expensed, while some of them have not yet expensed any funds. So kind of gives a brief update on each of those. I'm happy to run through any specifics, or I can kind of read off each of them kind of generally if we'd like. Happy to spend as much or as little time on this as the committee would like.
Can I ask just, what is the story about the Howe Sears Farm acquisition?
Yeah, so the Howe Sears Farm family farm acquisition, the majority of those funds have been expended. So $423,467.92. There is still a purchase order for the survey work that's open. So once that's paid, and actually that was March 4th, so that's likely already paid at this point. But that survey work being complete, that purchase order will be paid out through the remaining funds. And as is required from the funding agreement, with that survey complete, town manager's office is working on language to present to the
Greater Worcester Land
Greater
Trust?
Worcester Land Trust. Thank you. I should have written that one out. It's been a while. Greater Worcester Land Trust to file with the state for the conservation restriction.
Right, so they will be holding that, okay.
Yep.
Are they the only one that would this be the only thing that they have in our town?
I think so. Sudbury Valley Trustees, SVT, has down South Street, the vineyard.
The vineyard, yeah.
Greater Worcester doesn't. We were talking to them when we were looking at the Allen Farm,
Mm-hmm.
but nothing has yet come of that.
Okay. That's good to know.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask. Yeah. Thank you for providing the update on the projects. I think there's also an element of what do we want to communicate out to the public in terms of where projects stand. I know there are some of these projects that were community raised, like Arrowwood, right? Arrowwood playgrounds. I think, reading here, that you got some sketches that are preliminary sketches that have been created and costs have been expended, but next steps are to complete the design pending a wetlands evaluation. Obviously we move the speed of government, right? But I think transparency in that, and even if that date moves or rough timing, like fall of or August, I think it'd be very helpful if where it is known. So like wetlands evaluation, how long does that take? Martha?
I'm sorry.
Wetlands
Sorry,
and-
I was, can you please repeat the question? I was
Sure.
focused on something else.
So Arrowwood design, Arrowwood project. So there's a line I'm here saying, complete the designs and pending a wetland evaluation. Does that mean it would have gone to Conservation Commission to evaluate? Or about to go to Conservation
No, it
Commission?
would have gone to an environmental engineering firm to flag and to evaluate the wetlands. And then, once they have a plan for work, then it would go to the Conservation Commission.
Okay, so that's sounds like a long process.
It can be.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be, but a couple of months.
Can I just ask you, we've had an unusual amount of rain in the past, I don't know, 6 months or so. Things are very wet. How does that affect the work of the Conservation Commission in that, in that sort of thing? I mean, it's like everything's a swamp now.
It makes it harder to get out there. But wetlands are evaluated on the basis of the kinds of plants that are growing there and the soils, among other things. And so you can tell from characteristics of the soils, the composition, the color, whether it's a permanent wetland or whether it's just temporarily flooded because we have had a ton of rain, as we have indeed had.
So plants and soil, huh?
Chris, do you know if you could get maybe one of those preliminary sketches for Arrowwood? That could be part of your presentation, because I know there is a lot of interest in a very enthusiastic and committed group behind that. It would be nice to share that is moving along in a tangible way. Thank you. Yes.
The point that I was contemplating when Jason asked his question
Sorry.
was if these two documents are almost but not quite in sync in terms of naming of projects. So for example, on this update, the how Sears Family Farm acquisition is so labeled, but on this document, it's labeled Lake Street. So to the extent that these two documents are publicly available, if we could merge whatever we're gonna call that project, that would be great.
Yeah, I apologize if I missed some of the namings. I've been trying to pull them from the actual warrant that was voted. Typically, we have kind of a title along with the warrant article number. So that's typically how I try to name them. And that's usually pulled from the actual application document. But I'll try to make sure we clean that up.
Just consistency. is great.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yep.
thank you.
And technically, some of that land was on Grove Street.
It was.
This was, so
Yes.
you're right. Any other thoughts or questions on the project updates?
I guess, let me ask you about the basketball courts. Is that something they, have they bid it out already? Are they going to bid it out again?
So I believe it was bid out, and they're going to rebid it.
Do we have a sense of timing on that rebid? Because that, I think, is a question you could get at town meeting, that people are waiting, and it's very obvious if you're in Dean Park that nothing's happened yet. But if we had a sense of timing, like Martha said, that it's in the next 2 months, or if we have an exact date, that's swell. But
I can try to get a more concise
That would be
update on
great.
that specifically.
Well, a lot of that has to do with the response that they get to, putting it out for bid. If they put it out again this year, they didn't get any answers last year, so
was it they didn't get any answers, or were we just,
I
Nobody
believe that
bid.
no one bid on it.
wow?
It was late in the season.
Well, yeah, I mean, technically, once we got it passed, the bids didn't go out till like August or September, and they were gonna do it in October. So, I'm speculating, but a couple of things, people that do that type of work probably were already booked for the rest of the
You're
year.
probably right.
I figured, yeah.
If they do it, I thought they were gonna do it in the spring and rebid it. I can't remember who told me that. Maybe Mo. He's not here.
Right, they may have already rebid it by now. Again, that was March 4th that we got that update, so I'll
Right.
double check on that
It is,
timing.
so it
I
is
think
posted,
it-
went out today. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, notice went out today, to the, the news alerts. And the publication time was March 13th, 2024, with the closing date of April 4th. More specific details can be through the department bids, notification, so it's out.
So it has been bid, and if you'd like to bid on that, please sharpen your pencils.
There you go.
So, hopefully they got the summer
That would be
to
wonderful.
get it done. All right.
Any others?
Yeah, so the pergola, if they don't move forward with, well, since we've given, well, we haven't approved any project because it wasn't eligible. But at what point do we formally take back their balance? Another town council thing?
Yeah, so per the funding agreement, I think we put a 2-year timeline on each of those. I can go back to the specific date of that award date.
Okay.
I believe it was back to the town, I think we dated it to the town meeting, which it was authorized under, but I would just want to double check. So after that sunset, or prior to that sunset, the
Let's see.
applicants should be coming to us to ask for either extending that date or essentially, well, not returning the funds because we still hold them.
In light
but-
of the fact that the assessment that was, steps 1 through 6 of their proposal determined that what they hoped for going forward was what was not possible. The remedy that they saw was possible was rejected by this body because it's not eligible for CPA funding. So is there a path forward for them? And it's not going to get better overnight. If it's not salvageable, that really makes the rest of their original proposal from Lamar Pagano moot. It's not possible to move forward with that proposal. So do we have to wait until the end of that period if there's no viable way for them to complete that contract with Lamar Pagano?
With the funding agreement in place, I think it would have to be a mutual agreement to return or otherwise not, close out that project prior to the funds being expended. So I'll review with the applicant if that's something that, how that would work if there isn't a path forward or if they're pursuing a different avenue that they would like to present to us.
Anything else on project updates? We can turn to the budget review and update. Chris has also given us that budget we've all looked at so far. What would you like to say about this budget, Chris?
Yeah, so I think we talked about the main portion that I wanted to draw the committee's attention to. I do note, I did have some refinements in the final hours leading up to the meeting here. I did highlight those and provided a brief summary of some of those changes from what you might have reviewed earlier, just to make sure that was clear. Primarily what I did was, I removed those actuals because they're not that they're not accurate, but it's hard to base a budget on those without having the final allocations and without, knowing the final expenditures. So really want to base it off of the FY24 budget as a more conservative approach. So we've done that here. We've utilized the estimated CPA surcharge and the estimated state match from those targeted funds. Again, these are proposed, and those numbers will likely change in actuality of when those are finally allocated. We haven't included an investment income line item to detail some of that, and then allocated the funds. So kind of going back, it's probably a little bit clearer of the logistics, that Article 33 that we're voting on. I'll just kind of run through those numbers briefly. So the estimated local CPA tax surcharge as projected is going to be $848,990 with a state matching funds projected at 21.02%, which will amount to $178,457 for a total projected revenue of $1,027,447. Those appropriations we're proposing just the regular 5% for administrative allocations and 10% for each of the reserve accounts, which is the 5% is $51,372, and then the 10% allocations will be projected at $102,744, which leaves an estimated revenue for the budgeted reserve of $667,843. I did add in some numbers, just trying to model projections of some of the typical expenses that we see out of the administrative funds. So dues and memberships, projecting that at $4,000. Our last year's was $3,500. I anticipate a small increase, unlikely to be 4,000. So again, being somewhat conservative here with that number, but that'll certainly cover what I anticipate will be our membership towards the coalition dues. For supplies, we've really seen minimal use of that line item. I have budgeted 5,000 for this year, and that's related to signage, which again I'll kind of touch on where we're at with that later in the evening. But we're allocating or anticipating approximately 5,000 as a budget to work with towards our signs and any other related supplies that we have to utilize in order to do some of that advertising. So. And then other than that, all of the other line items are the projects as recommended. So again, those are subject to town meeting vote. So I did add those in there. We would have to adjust if in the event that the town voted otherwise. And I guess of a other note in those line items, so where a project is a phase 2 or built off of one of the other allocations, just for kind of cleanliness of showing those, or it's a phase 2, I've included in that original line, so it'll show an allocation of the original amount of that phase 1 work. The new proposal is in that FY25 proposed line, so just keeping those projects together rather than creating a number of new project lines.
Question.
Yes.
Is this the format that you're going to be interested in taking into town meeting?
Yeah, so this is the one that we've used for the past couple town meetings in terms of formatting.
I mean, I understand putting the line items together, like example, gravestone restoration assessment, 5,500 last year, and then 205,000 this year with new article. But I think there's going to be folks that are going to be looking at this saying, well, what is article is that? Like, kind of connecting the dots. It's hard, I'm not able to connect the dots to the articles as presented by not having it here. So it looks like you're looking for more, for example, it looks like we're asking for more money for the same project. But it's not technically the same project. One was part 1. Like, it is, but it's not. So the effort and scope of what we're trying to accomplish is restore the gravestones at, like, the cemetery, the historic section of the cemetery. But technically, town meeting approved this amount. There's a balance from that. And then there's also a new effort, which is a continuation. You're approving this new effort. It's not like there was a project overrun. So it's hard, but there is a project overrun.
With the column to the right of it that says, Article 34, Article 35, do you think that would solve it?
That's enough formatting, yeah. I mean, however to make it clean, but also be informative, because while the gravestone restoration project is separate, 2 distinct projects, the Camp Wanigan parking lot is truly an overrun, and like they need more money in order to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think the Camp Wanigan under the general reserve, you should indicate that's the parking lot. Or construction, or something to tie it to the other one. The first one is Camp Wanigan parking, parentheses, construction.
So, format-wise, is it possible to add another column that might explain those? Or would it make sense to, at the end of this document, do some explanations? I do think that that perhaps the Camp Wanigan that's under the general budget reserve, maybe that should be Camp Wanigan 2024 Phase 1, just so it does show that it's,
Yes.
or part construction, just so that, like, Jason said, that it shows that that is the same project.
Yeah, I mean, we could do a
Maybe
separate,
some notes.
we could do a separate, column, but I think what I could do, and to that point, is just, where I combine some of them, we can separate them out unless it is part of the same project and asking for additional funding. And then in that line where it's saying the playground assessment, we can just put ATM 24, article, whatever.
Question
Yes.
or comment. What I would do is just footnote them all. Start with the letter A and go back, pick one out. Playground assessment, put an A next to it and put A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Under A, put down Article 39, 2023 town meeting.
That would probably be the easiest thing to do.
This way,
I'd put the year first because I don't trust everybody to read carefully. But that's a
you
great
gotta
idea.
put what it is first. You got, yeah, just Article, whatever. 2023 town meeting, Article 33. This way, there's a reference to what that number means, I guess.
Yeah. And you wouldn't have to reformat your whole table.
And having, as opposed to having to write a sentence or two on everything.
It's a good point.
It gives you a cross-reference.
When we look at it, we know what on this budget corresponds to the project
Yes.
update, but it's true that the town meeting members, many of whom will be opening their packet for the first time as the meeting commences, don't know.
No,
And so if we can make it easy for them to connect the dots, that would make sense.
Right.
I had a question about investment income. There's none in the 2024 budget or in the proposed fiscal year 25 budget.
Yeah, so we didn't budget investment income, FY '24. The actuals do show that. So I don't have that number in front of me, but we did receive investment income for that. So it doesn't show in the FY '24 budget, but the actuals will adjust that amount.
it's probably not been posted to the general ledger yet.
Pardon me.
It's probably not been posted to the general ledger yet,
How about-
so he wouldn't know the number. The thing that's not in here is, because when I went back and I got the general ledger information, they have it listed, I guess, as a separate account. FY '22 taxes collected in FY '23 is listed separate, and you don't have, it's over and above the 777. There's another $4,200 that was collected, but it was collected in FY '23 as opposed to FY '22. And it gets posted as a separate line item in the account. It's separate from the regular account. So you do not have that $4,000 in this entire spreadsheet.
Well, it will turn up eventually, right?
Huh?
It will turn up eventually.
Well, yeah, it's buried in the account, but I'm saying he's putting this together. If this is what we think we got to spend, it's off by that $4,000. There's $4,000 sitting in the account somewhere that's not on this piece of paper. That's all. It's in the account, yes. It's there.
Does that get posted, so in your scenario, does that get posted to the actuals for 22, or is that or actuals for 23?
23, because that's when the cash came in the door.
Okay. So we reflected,
They
so,
couldn't post it in 22 because they closed the books for FY '22
Right.
on July 1st. Somebody pays the 2022 taxes late. It shows up in 2023.
So would that be in the FY '23 actuals?
No, it's not in,
I think
the
it should
numbers
be.
he's got here, it's not in there, because
It's not in there.
I did have the actual, I got the general ledger account. I got it on a spreadsheet at home, they sent it to me.
So for simplicity, would it just be adding it
Just
adding it to the 777?
I don't know if you just want to, I don't know where you would put it. because, you know, in terms of just maybe add it to the local surcharge. You know, you could just put it in there and you just have to know that the number here is the sum of two account numbers on the general ledger, I guess. I don't know if you want to make it a separate line item that says taxes collected late, you know.
Not me personally, but
No,
as long
I
as the
don't-
num-
I don't think we
as long
wanna
as it's
get it-
reflected
The more
somewhere.
you put that information down, people are gonna start to ask questions at the town meeting. What do you mean taxes collected late? You know,
Why don't we just consider it a nice surprise that we're gonna get later on?
yeah, I mean, it's $4,000, that's
It's
all.
not
We'll,
significant.
we'll add it into the FY23 actual figure. And I think that just goes to illustrate the difficulties with the actuals versus the budget and why we want to be a little
Well,
bit conservative.
you know, in all fairness to you, you probably call them and say, can I have the balance in this account? And that's what they gave you, as opposed to account number 1A, which is $4,000 sitting over here. It's kind of tied together, but it is a separate account.
Right.
Because when they sent it to me, it was in a separate spread, you know. They sent me like one spreadsheet with all the accounts, meaning the collections, the surcharge, the state match, the investment income is listed separately, all on the ledger. You know, it's account 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, A, B, C, D, something like that.
Have a further question?
Yes.
So the investment income is that on par with anticipating how it should be coming in, like the amounts?
Yeah, so that is, you know, on par with what we typically get for investment income. There is work to get some of the fund invested into a trust, which will kind of balance those out. So as of right now, it's varied a little bit. Having it in a trust will be a little bit more, it'll garner a little bit of a higher rate, and it'll also be a little bit more, a little easier to anticipate what that amount will be,
Okay.
whereas it's been a little bit varied now in terms of the
That's good.
allocations.
But the trust has been established, right?
It's in the process of being established.
Okay.
I think I had sent you a note a while back about going back over the schedule, because without going into the nitty-gritty detail, I think some of the numbers are incorrect here. So I think, you know, I'd like to go over them with you.
Mhm.
I don't know if you people want to listen in. I mean, one quick one. You go to the 23 actuals. You look at the
I'd be
CP
happy to we can sit down and
Yeah.
go over all of these.
I think, you know, the numbers may come out slightly different, but the money's the money that's there. They're just some math issues. That's all, is what it is.
Are the numbers or the corrections you're looking for things that would substantially change this? 'Cause we do have on the agenda that we need to review and vote on this proposed budget.
It-
Are there changes that need to be made, or is it
Yes.
before we vote on it? Yes.
I don't think they'll be substantial. Depends on your definition of substantial.
Material?
It won't be substantial, but they'll come in different.
I guess the question is, does it change the bottom line?
I don't know the answer to that, because I haven't asked to see the general ledger since last year.
Yes,
Let me
we
just
need
do-
to vote on, what we vote on needs, my understanding, needs to be complete and accurate. Oh,
Let me just do a quick one here.
I can't do
Look at
that.
the FY '23 actuals. You take line 2 and line 3, the 797 and the $302,000. It's actually 797.3, 302.6. You add those two together, comes to $1,100,000. So 10% of that would be $110,000. Yet when you go down to the 10% allocation, there's only $109,000 allocated. So the
Is
allocation
it
is
just
off.
the,
So, I mean, there is a write-up on the community preservation website about how to true up if you're short what you actually had come in. So there's a whole write-up on that.
But I'm saying, it's just a math issue here.
No, I understand. I'm just saying that there is, that scenario you're painting right now, it is described on the community preservation's website about how to do that. I think that's part of the exercise offline, is how, hey, how do they recommend to deal with truing it up? Like, the number you're quoting here is the actuals. So the number here then on the bottom here is, this sounds more like this was the actual FY '23 budgeted amount.
No, FY
the
23 is
10%.
an actual. But it should been, the 10% should be 110,000, not 109,000.
Sorry, can you say again what it was? And I just pulled up the Excel so I can look at the formula. Can you just reiterate?
Go
Yeah.
to the 10%, go to the allocation on the general reserve. The 65% allocation for 2023.
For the 2023 actual?
Yeah?
Yeah.
And what's the formula?
So that's 115. Let me see what the cells that's pulling from.
The total in the box is $773,000. That's actually 70% of the total, not 65.
For the purposes of the vote we have to take tonight, that is for the fiscal year '25 proposed budget, perhaps reconciling the actuals from the past fiscal year. We don't have to, there's obviously some corrections that need to be made, but the actuals are the actual numbers of what was received and spent. So we need to see what that correction is, but we don't vote on it, we accepted it. Could we separate in the interest of getting that right and reporting that correctly and also moving the meeting along? Can we separate and vote on our proposed budget
Yep.
for the upcoming fiscal year for the purposes of town meeting? And then ask that you gentlemen continue to work
Yes.
on straightening out the actuals?
Can I ask, I didn't read it that close.
Absolutely.
Why are we voting on a proposed budget? Because when the actual comes in, it's going to be different than the proposed. Does that mean we have to vote on it again?
No,
I
I
think
mean,
we technically have to propose a budget for
So-
town meeting.
so ultimately for town meeting,
Oh,
what we're approving is really just Article 33
Yeah.
and the allocations.
Yeah.
So these are all,
So-
I mean, these
so
are all
that-
details that we provide in the.
that is a separate
for
page then.
transparency,
in
but-
this schedule.
But ultimately, what we're looking to review and approve tonight is
John.
that Article 33, which.
That's, yes, that's
Yes.
that.
So I'd like to see both happen. I'd like to make sure that we have a handle on what our actuals are, but I'm not sure that that's something we can solve tonight. And if it's not something that we are voting on, let's vote on the part we have to vote on and make sure we get
Right,
the
which is,
business
pull that page
of
up again.
CPC completed
I thought I had it
and
here
before
already.
10
Yeah.
o'clock.
So
She's
yeah,
right,
so
we're voting on this page here.
Yes,
That's good.
okay. And then we'll continue to work on sorting out
Yes.
the actuals and making sure that they're
Fine.
correct, but we can
And it'll be important to.
work on that
to-
offline.
Right, and it'll be important to get those, I'm happy to refine that, from, the points that we talked about today in terms of the formatting as well. Because that ultimately will go in our memo to town meeting members. So we'll make sure that we,
And the information
refined
is
down.
all there, the money is all there, it's just really a question of making sure it's reported in the right place and that we've reported all
as a
of
way
it.
that's readable, right?
Okay.
Okay.
So let's look at that Article 33, which is the budget that we need to review and vote on for town meeting. Are there any thoughts or comments on that? It's our projection of what our local surcharge receipts will be. It's a projection right now. The coalition is telling us that 21.2% is probably a reasonable, albeit disappointing, but conservative number to use for their match. So we've got our projected revenues and then our standard appropriations of 5% for administrative, 10% for historic resources, 10% for community housing, 10% for open space and recreation, and then the rest we would save in our budgeted reserve or in our conversations we've referred to as our CPC general fund.
Yep.
Are there any other thoughts or questions about Article 33? Got a calculator out. Does it
Yeah.
add up correctly?
I trust it. But I do have a question about the projections for the CPA surcharge receipts. Is that from what source is that?
From the coalition website, I think.
Oh, no, not that one, not the state match, the our local receipts.
Oh, the surcharge receipts, so that's from, that would be from the assessor's office.
Okay. Cool.
Would you like a motion to vote on this?
Yes, please.
I would like to make a motion to approve Article 33, which details our anticipated budget for fiscal 2025.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of the budget, Article 33 as presented?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Then Article 33, the budget, recommended budget does pass. Next, and then you folks will continue to talk about the actuals, and we'll get a handle on that. Again, we actually have actuals. We didn't the first time around. So we'll continue to discuss those, the best way to make sure they're all fully represented, that we can look at easily. So next is the updates to the community preservation plan. I know that there have been some changes made by folks and uploaded to the, saved in the drive. I would like us to get that done and to be able to vote on that by June. So if you've got an opportunity to look at the community housing part, if there's any feedback from the housing authority, that would be tremendous.
There was, and I sent some changes to you back in January.
Okay,
Have
awesome.
those been made, or do I need to make them?
I can add those if they weren't already.
So I think the way we tried to do it last year with one large Google document in which the whole world edited simultaneously might not have been our best way to do it. So Chris, if now that you've got another right hand, if you have the resources to get that done as they're updated, and if there are updates to make to parts of open space and conservation, I will remind Carl that parks and recreation needs to look,
Yeah.
and we'll get those in. But I would like to be able to vote, as one of the final things we do is this fiscal year, in June, vote on the updates to that. I'd like to review the application. I think there are a few things that in all of our many rounds of editing last year that we maybe could clarify. If anybody else wants to look at that with me, I always love another set of eyes.
Yeah, for logistics, what I'd like to do is hopefully a little bit cleaner this time around. We'll leave that folder open, so as you have edits that you'd like to see or that have been presented to you, feel free to put them in that, and I'll work with staff. We'll have a draft where we'll collate all those. We'll give you permissions, but not edit permissions, but that way you can see all of the edits. We'll try to put them all in one document. We'll try to have a draft for May. We can discuss if there's any edits in terms of that, but again, put them in the folder, and we'll just keep updating as we go for that
Could
June
you
meeting.
send a quick email to the entire committee reminding them of that we'd like to look at a draft by May and the link to the folder, just so when folks are on a fly, if that could go out this week, then with that, we will get you the changes sooner and give you time to make them. You look like there's something about to say.
Yes. So I remember, Kathy, you were talking about the complexities of using as an applicant, right? The format of the forms.
Yes.
And I know we have the forms combined in a larger document, and then there's a smaller, right? Because it's really a part of a larger thing, right? So I think we do need a rethink.
Yeah, I think there
About-
was a request that we have the large document there, but then every single document needs to be readily available on its own as a fillable PDF and aptly named, easy to find. We definitely want to make the corrections so that we don't have, Kathy, like you said, if you couldn't find it,
It took me longer to find the document than it did to complete it. And I,
And I
out of
tried to
anyone
help you
should
with
know what
part
I'm
of
doing
that.
when it comes to this, so it's definitely.
together we found it, but then I wasn't confident that what we found was the right one, because I could find some old ones.
I got it
And I
all.
could find some new ones.
didn't even
So,
So-
I mean, I'm willing to take the lead responsibility on trying to sort that out and work with your staff. But that we would have that fixed.
So, yeah, we can definitely look at that as an alternative, and I don't want to get too far into this. This is something we can certainly touch on in May, and we can put this as an agenda item to discuss as we update the preservation plan. But if the committee's feeling adventurous, Planning Board and Zoning Board of Appeals have both successfully uploaded all of their applications to our online permitting system. It was an effort that I admittedly at first did not think was possible. Staff has proved me wrong and really did a lot of work to get that going. I do think that's a format that we might be able to put this application for the online permitting system. A lot of departments have gone that way and have successfully uploaded a lot of their local permitting that way. If the committee is feeling adventurous, we can explore that opportunity for May, at least to get it going. It will take, a few months to get that all imported and get it up and running, but I'd be happy to at least give a presentation. We kind of look at the back end of, one of the planning board applications, so you can see kind of how that works. We can kind of delve into it that way if the committee is feeling adventurous.
How much coffee do you have? That's direct correlation to how adventurous. That would be great. I mean, I'd like to look at making sure we're asking the questions correctly first.
Have you had, so, two questions, I guess. Have you had any feedback on how easy it is to use that? And is it the type of thing that an average townsperson who's not familiar with design and permitting process, for example, can easily do?
So I think it makes the process much smoother, and actually one of the benefits of it, in my mind, is the communication. So when they submit applications, you're actually able to make it email out automatically, notification to people who may want to comment on it. There's a lot of communication that's really good, and when someone comments, they'll have uploaded their email. It emails the applicant directly to let them know that someone has uploaded a comment that they may want to address or review. So it really streamlines a lot of that process. It helps an applicant, so it actually shows a timeline of the permitting, and they can see which approval steps are unlocked, where they are in the process, and where they have to go. They'll see grayed out sections. So I think it does kind of help in that way, that you can kind of view as staff and administrative processes are going on. It's not just you hand in a paper and you you wait. You actually get to watch the process unfold. so.
That's a great question, because I literally am just trying to find it right now, and I'm already confused.
Can I throw some?
But I think it's worth considering. But first, let's make sure our application says it has all the information that we want it to, it has to, and then look at, which is the most user-friendly manner. I think starting with having the appropriate current documents readily available under the tab that says Forms.
That can be completed.
Each one, right, you can click on it, complete it, and hit submit, or there's a clear instruction how to save it and email it. We also, when we get to that, should discuss what is we had it on our original document, our original application, it is not there now, but what the process is for submitting it. Originally, it needed to be submitted by a due date to the town clerk's office, and actually a hard copy and email, because then it was stamped if we ever came to an issue of who came first. But that, we didn't realize till after it got deleted, and, literally there were community members handing it to committee members, or there were emails, but who does the email go to? I want to make sure it's crystal clear. Here's the documents. It's 3 or 4 documents that you can fill in consistently, and what do you do with it once you've hit complete? So, and maybe it does go on here somewhere, but I'm gonna have to look closer at this, because first blush, I'm like, what? Online permitting system, there's a lot of little squares here, explore. But yeah, let's look at what our options are and what is the most user-friendly for our neighbors and people who don't, you're right, a builder should have known that like the back of their hand, but we don't necessarily. John, you had your hand up and I was blowing.
Well, I mean, I was just gonna have some general input, because, along Kathy's line, yeah, trying to find the document and all of that, but again, I've only been on the committee a year now. Initially, I went into the Google Drive and rummaged, I drilled through the Google Drive till I found the planned document. But if I want to now submit something, I guess if we're gonna, first of all, I think online's a good idea. But if I open up the town website, and I go to the question, ask a question, and say, I want a CPC form, and click on it, then I would assume the CPC form would jump right up, as opposed to sending
You
me
would be
somewhere.
assuming wrong. Don't.
So I can go somewhere, Well, see, I've never tried that route. Like I said, I did it in the Google Drive. But, having filled out forms online for other things, whether it's, use a loan application at the credit union, you click on loan, boom, the form comes up, It should be right there, I guess. And I think eventually we could probably get there, but I agree with you that we're gonna get all the information squared away first, and then put it up. And, because even now, I'm still, every time I open the Google Drive, it's a search.
The first year it was okay for us to say it's imperfect, we're working on it. Now we need to get it right and easy. We have,
Yeah.
the time for saying we're new and excuses is over. Okay. We'll work on that. So that is for May and hopefully be done by June. It would be great to end this fiscal year, this session of this committee by completing
Submit all
that.
the edits for the plan
Pardon
document.
me?
Submit edits for the plan document.
Yes. So it also, in May, in addition to my birthday, which I'm sure you all have on your calendars, will be our May public hearing. Shameless. Our May public hearing, which, Chris, you did indicate that you are on track for the 2 public announcements of it in the paper. Also, if we have in an email, something we can share with social media to let people know that the public is invited to our May meeting to discuss the community needs, priorities, ideas. I would like to have another workshop in the fall where we get into nitty-gritty with folks, but this is for them to come and tell us Shrewsbury needs or I'd like to see more of, or have you thought of? And we'd like the public to join us and tell us that. We've had 2 up now, and that with that, Jason has a PowerPoint where he gives an overview. I feel like every year that should get a little bit more brief.
Me, brief?
Well, I know, but we're gonna try. We're gonna try a brief overview, because we also have other business to do during that, to have a brief overview of what CPC is, quickly what is in general allowed, what the priorities are, and then ask folks to tell us what they think. Maybe we'll have 10 people here, maybe we won't. But I would suggest, because we have pushed some of the article items from today to our main meeting, that perhaps we consider starting our meeting earlier. See if we can't get through our business in a half hour or so, and invite the public to join us at 7 or 7:30. What do you think?
Checking.
So our main meeting is on,
May 6th.
it's May 6th.
Okay. Hopefully I'm in good shape then.
Is this room available if we were to start earlier, Chris?
I think we're scheduled to be at the police station, aren't we?
Ooh. Are we?
Yeah, we are.
Yep, May 6th says police station.
Okay,
And we really want to make sure we have an extra microphone.
yes.
Yes, that's definitely, we definitely have to do that.
Either one, like we have in here, that someone could walk up to, or that we could hand around a microphone.
Yeah. Otherwise, I'll have to bring my Trails megaphone.
Let's avoid that.
Oh, yeah. There is a Trails megaphone.
Funny, no one ever let me have a microphone.
It's the day before voting,
I'm good here.
Oh, that's true.
again.
That's the day before
The
election
day
day.
before voting again.
That's why we're at the police station. Yep. That's why this room's unavailable.
Well, I'll make it. I may have to leave early, because I work the polls. I'm up at 5 o'clock the next morning, earlier than that even.
So we want to be succinct and stick to,
Yeah.
get through the work that we need to do. So to that end, the earlier that meeting documents can be shared, folks can think of their questions or review things beforehand, we'll be able to move a little more efficiently through the agenda, and we'll get you some coffee for the morning.
Yeah, believe me, I do a lot of coffee. We start at 5, we get done at like 9:30, 10 o'clock at
It's a
night.
long day. Thank
very
you
long
for
day.
doing that, though.
Can I mention Trails Committee at this point?
Yes.
Okay, Trails Committee would like to make a presentation of our vision for the town. We have a townwide, I don't know if you've heard about this, townwide plan for trails. And I don't know how it can be compacted, but it does have some slides, and I can talk to the team and just see what they think, how small and how compact they can get it, but we'd like to just have it out there and allow people to think about it a little bit.
Do
And-
we know if at the police station, or do, in advance, that would probably need to be submitted so we can quickly get that up, show it, and share it? I mean, obviously, they have the technology there, but do we have access to that?
I would always recommend that they provide it to us at least 2 days in advance. It allows us kind of the ability to post it up so that members can take a quick glance at what they're anticipating viewing, as well as staff to review it, just to make sure that we're good to go. And then we're able to kind of test to make sure that we can pull that up when the time comes. We do a quick technology test.
Okay, so you want the PowerPoint ahead of time?
Right.
And we can do that.
Is
I-
there anything from our other public hearings that you folks have seen that you think we should do again? Simply invite folks to speak to us?
I think we should limit the time
Yes.
people speak, because, they're long meetings.
They are. I
And
think
for the,
in
the person
past,
who's, the fifth in line is, here till 9 o'clock at night, and that's not really fair.
and typically we say 5 minutes, but I would like to reserve the right to make that call based on how many people show up. Or let us know in advance that they would like to speak. If we only have 3 people that have something to share, 5 minutes would be great. Trails will let us know if they're 5. 10 minutes probably would be way too long, so under that probably is better. But what do you think if we've got 5 people waiting? Can we do 5 minutes each if we've completed the rest of our information? I mean, Trails is the only group we know of that wants to make a formal presentation. In the past, it's been folks with an idea or a question.
But I think that the challenge is one question generates a discussion, and then another question, and then some people are sitting there for 35 minutes. And which means there's people sitting out there, so I think there should be a better way to do it.
What do you think that is?
Well, they could submit their questions beforehand, but I think limiting to maybe even one topic, and there was a group that literally went page by page through everything they wanted, it's not something that would be eligible under CPA, so it truly was a real waste of time, because they weren't eligible, but they kept talking. And we let them talk, so it's our fault. So I think that there definitely should be less give and take. This is what you have. Is it eligible? Is it not? Here's my question. And then move on to the next one. I mean, we should be having 3-hour meetings.
We've already put out the announcements, right?
Um,
Or we could, with social media and email invitations, ask people to submit questions in advance, because we could try to answer those in our overview to start. Or we simply tell people that we're so grateful you're here. You have 3 minutes, and we start a timer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, to me, I'm interpreting the conversation as more of the reaction to the workshop, as opposed to a community preservation plan listening session,
Right.
where we're soliciting resources, needs, and opportunities in our community. It's purely listening. It's listening to Trails, it's listening to anybody who has hey, I think this is important in our community. It's not about giving feedback to say, that's not eligible. Maybe, if we can hear, things like, my house needs to be painted, we can gently just say, hey,
Well,
this is
we
the case,
can't
but it's not,
interrupt.
but it's really a
I think
listening
there's a
session.
gavel in here we can borrow. Just say,
It's a
we
listening
could
session.
interrupt if we see it going off the rails.
It's supposed to inform us for the community preservation plan update. Are there new resources that have come online? Like Lake Street, Grove Street should be factored into the plan, right? Because as new acreage has come online. If there's folks that have see a need to have more open space preservation in light of other zoning and other activities going on, then, folks can comment that, but it's really a listening session.
So can we make sure that anything we put out to the public inviting them says that it's a listening session? We invite folks a limited amount of time to share resources, needs, and
Opportunities.
opportunities with the Community Preservation Committee. And we can, when we invite folks to speak, we can also remind them that this is what we're looking for. It's not a discussion of an individual project. That certainly they can submit questions about that to planning@shrewsbury.ma.gov. We can put that on a card and just hold it up again and again. But try to really shape what this conversation, that it's what their presentations are, that we're here to listen to them about those 3 areas.
What are we trying to accomplish?
What's that?
What are we trying to accomplish with this meeting?
So that any final edits we make to the plan reflect that information that people share with us. I mean, we may find out there's an overwhelming desire in this community for I don't know, Kentucky bluegrass planted somewhere, I don't
So
know.
we're just looking for the people to tell us what they think of the plan.
And what they think that the needs are of the town. You know, ironically, people bring up dog parks all the time, and no one has ever brought forth a proposal for a dog park. It's not about the nitty-gritty of applications. It's not about us saying eligible or not. That we're here just to listen, so that the community has input on the work that we do.
It's about a vision, but it's more focused than that.
Right, so they have to hit on the 4 categories, one of the 4 categories, and it has to be one of those 3 subtopics: resources, needs, opportunities. Updates to the plan then drive the July cohort of CPC members forward about how they review projects going forward.
Yeah. Okay.
And if there's something, if there is new verbiage that's come in, new feedback that's come in on the plan to make a change that's substantial enough to impact our goal, one of the goals, then we will reflect that in the goal. We will revise that goal. The idea is to get we're supposed to get feedback from the community, go back to our respective committees that you're all representative of, right, or the 5 out of 9 represent directly, and say, okay, we got the plan update. Is there anything we want to communicate back to CPC? So maybe there is, I'm making it up, Housing Authority may want to say, but hey, our goal is we want to have X number of units to go along with the town manager's projection of being ahead of SHI, or work towards that. Just make it up, not saying that you guys did, right? Or some percentage of maintaining open space in our community over a rolling period of time, right? So just any more tangible.
Or in certain areas of town,
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
What were the 4? You had resources, needs, opportunities, and?
Well, those are the 3,
three
those are the 3, but then we have our
Okay.
4 CPA categories. Which trails would then cover open space and recreation, kind of covered between those 2.
Yeah, we don't worry about organized sport fields that much, but otherwise, yeah.
And organized sports have been invited every time. I've personally, in the beginning, emailed the presidents of all those leagues when we had an email that we were all sharing. We first started the plan. They're invited to the table. It's their choice if they come.
No, Trails is not going to be asking for anything for specific projects at all at this point, because we don't know what the specific projects are yet. This is just a town-wide picture of connectivity.
Sounds like opportunities to me.
Oh, there's plenty of opportunities.
And that'll be something terrific for other people, hopefully, that come to hear that Trails is working on a vision, and that vision is reflected in the plan, but any resident can come
Yes,
with an
and anybody who's got an
opportunity
idea about
or
it, you know,
a resource.
if you know any shortcuts through the woods, let us know.
Someone's backyard.
Yes, yes.
So I suggest that that part of the meeting, we welcome the folks, briefly just say who we all are, what committees that you represent or boards. An overview, quick, dirty, here it is, and then we listen.
Okay.
And if we are able, we do have a number of things that we'd like to discuss, and our biggest agenda item will be these warrant articles, in reacting to whatever town council is able to tell us by then. Hopefully, it is something as simple as we substitute some language, new ones are voted on and presented. We have voted on Article 33, so we don't need to include that one. It's the ones about the specific projects and where the funds come from. And what else is on in our plan? But we'll see where we are with that. If we're just an update, if we can remind folks this week or next week just about the edits to the plan and keep that moving along, we won't need to spend a great deal of time discussing that in May. That'll be a June item as well.
One more thing. So there's a statutory requirement to go back to the individual committees that you represent. And I believe in our bylaw, we also had the bylaw that was established CPC, that we would also check in with the select board. So I think those are the minimum.
And do we have to do that can they report to us or their representatives? Or do we need to go make a presentation to each of those boards again?
As long as we have some check-in, I believe last year our schedules didn't line up, so I believe the chairperson of the select board had just sent emailed comments to myself as chair. I think that can be facilitated too, right?
Yes, that definitely can be.
And I've already been to the Conservation Commission.
Excellent. And the Housing Authority is meeting soon, so there's 2 agenda items for you.
Yep.
Elizabeth Street and the check-in. And we'll ask Carl and Mo about their respective boards as well,
And Gail.
and Gail. And I will check in with the select board.
And do we have a place to record that feedback?
How should we
We
do
have-
The
that?
heat map, that's what we did last year.
Right,
I'm losing my voice. We do have essentially an Excel spreadsheet where we collect that all. I'll clear out all the old comments, or I'll make a copy and clear out all the old comments from last year. We can use that Excel spreadsheet, and then what I do is I use that to generate the heat map.
we had also in the past met with the library trustees, the Council on Aging, and the Disabilities Commission.
Yes.
We could ask them if they'd like to meet or if they'd like to just provide some feedback in terms of a memo that we can review.
What were those groups? The Council on Disabilities and what?
Council of
Uh,
Aging.
Council on Aging, Disabilities Commission,
Library.
and Library. Are there
Thank you.
any others that we're missing?
HDC, Historic District Commission, was also checked in. I mean, I think at this point,
I
I
think we
mean,
could simply ask them, you
yeah,
know,
instead of a meeting.
we could send a letter if they would like to submit feedback. And they can either ask for a meeting or simply submit feedback. Because everybody's agendas are tight, it seems.
Right, I mean, I think initially, in the first few years, we made a point to meet with the committees because CPC was so new, CPA was so new to us, right? But now that we've been kind of come back to the same folks that are still on those boards as well, I think it's kind of running dry in terms of ideas.
Right.
And I think it's worth to have a standard form letter coming from you as chair, generally saying, open call for community preservation plan updates from these other commissions and boards, except for our statutory required or bylaw required check-ins.
We can work
Would
on
the
that, Chris.
would the memo that I have provided today suffice for that standard?
That would
Oh, yeah,
certainly
we put
give them
something in there,
an
though.
update. That does, Chris.
It does not, it's a great overview. The only thing that it asks is for a CPC representative to come to an upcoming meeting. So if we want to include language about, we would welcome an email, a memo, et cetera. I guess what we're requesting is feedback from the committee.
Yeah, so we could revise that rather than a CPC attending. Obviously, I think if we're invited, we'll be happy to send someone.
Right.
But, just requesting feedback at this time, so I can amend that.
I think I also am asking to change, in the middle there, it says, second paragraph says, CPC is in the process of reviewing the community preservation plans, identify community needs, which outline the community resources, needs, and goals. And I'm recommending to change goals to opportunities.
Yes. maybe we can edit that third paragraph. I'll think about it over coffee, but just that we're asking that place on your agenda, but ask for feedback. It doesn't have to be a meeting.
Yeah, now that it's not
Yeah.
now that we're not
You're
gonna be
right.
going there in person.
But I can't wordsmith at this hour without coffee.
I'm happy to do that in the morning and send it out.
Yes, we can do that. All right, so we will send this out right away. The publicity for the May public hearing it's all set, and we've got an agenda for that. So the last thing on our agenda tonight is about signage. My thoughts on signage is in our letters of agreement with the projects we fund. We simply ask if the project results in, if there is signage, that the Community Preservation Committee and the citizens of Shrewsbury be included in that acknowledgement in most appropriate manner possible. I don't think we should ask them to create a sign just for CPC. My bigger priority right now is to choose some very simple signage, something attractive that when there are shovels in the ground, we can put that out there by it so that our neighbors and the community see there's Community Preservation Act funds at work when they drive by the construction in Camp Wennigan, or eventually the library, or the story walk, or the playgrounds when they get going. Yes.
Shouldn't there be if approved by the Historic District Commission, shouldn't there also be a sign at the cemetery? Because there's active work now.
If it's happening now, yes. But there should be I'd like there to be a temporary sign wherever there is a project at work. And it depends on the project, I think, and I'm not sure that it should be dictated by us if there's permanent signage when it's done. But I think it would be appropriate if the work in the cemetery is happening, that there be somewhere, perhaps it's outside the gates because it is hallowed ground, but outside the gates that say, work here is funded by. But certainly if the Historic District Commission needs to say that's okay. Hopefully our sign will last longer than the College Pro painters that feel the need to put theirs by the cemetery or various places. There were some advertising on the outside the cemetery, which I thought was in poor taste.
Missed that somehow.
It didn't, luckily it didn't last very long. What else should we do or discuss about signage, Chris?
So I'm happy to go through, we do have that draft signage guidelines that we can go through. I'm happy to run through some of that. It is getting late tonight, but certainly happy to kind of take feedback on that as we go. I'll start to kind of add to that as well regardless for the next meeting. I did reach out to a local sign company requesting a preliminary quote, looking for approximately for them to provide a design of temporary signs with the logo and our we do have kind of a town branding palette. So they would provide, the scope would be that they would provide the design. They would get feedback from staff and from this committee to provide a revised sign, and then they would provide 10 of those temporary signs. I did ask for the aluminum style rather than the kind of poster board that seems to be, blows away pretty frequently. So I think I didn't put in the 5,000 that we budgeted, at least preliminarily, but I think we're probably within that range with the aluminum signs. So once I get that quote, I'll follow up and hopefully be able to provide some kind of a preliminary design for us to review. I've also asked within that, and I think, couching that funding, kind of that anticipated budget, I did ask for the possibility of at least ballpark numbers for a bulk order of, plaques, whether they're brass or otherwise, to look at just what that amount would look like. we can do some kind of a generic, this project funded by CPC funding, and then we would have a bulk order. So similar if we're asking that it be affixed to a sign, or it'll help us to have those on hand already paid for, and we can simply ask that they affix that to a sign or some other way to present that in the project. But that way it doesn't come at any cost to them. We've covered that cost by having the plaque available. But again, obviously we'll show that design and just trying to get some quotes and some ideas of what that would cost, so we can better refine those numbers. But
Probably our biggest priority is the temporary one, and those really cost well below $5,000. And frankly, we don't need a ton of them because they're temporary, and they last. They last, but it would be great to, maybe someday we have a big project, the kind of construction project that has the big fences around it. Then we get a banner one that goes out. But for right now, the ones that are more the size of a political sign, a lawn sign would probably be very appropriate.
right, and so we're requesting about 10 of those, if that number seems about right. I think that we have about 10 projects that probably could see that, and certainly we'd be reusing them as we go. So I think that's probably a good number to start with. If we wind up having a lot of projects, we could get more. At some point, I anticipate they'll start to degrade, and we'll want to get some fresh ones. But at least that'll get us started and see how that number works out for us. And yeah, and I would encourage, we do have in our funding agreement that they do have to include signage, so that would be something if we get a large construction project.
Right.
I think we can-
Certain types of projects would inherently have a sign anyway, and we just has to be included on it. I don't know that this body should dictate the size and, shape, and we don't need our names in gold. But depending on the policy, that we be included in any signage as appropriate. So I don't know that there's any actions we need to take on signage right now. John, did you have?
No,
Oh.
I'm just talking to myself here, sorry.
Then it's definitely time to ask if there are any other next steps right now, anything that needs to be done now? Otherwise, Jason, any last words?
Yeah, I think good, there's a lot of offline work needed to be done between you guys.
And if
Certainly
you can
reach
send
out.
reminders out, keep us on task.
Certainly, I'm available to assist if you need, as vice chair.
Yep.
Right.
That would be great.
Because definitely I can see May is gonna be busy.
Okay. All right, then, in that case, is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
The meeting is adjourned. We will see you again on May 6th at the police station.
At the police station, I gotta remember.
You all
Thank-
voting?
What?
I say aye.
need to-
or-
Oh, yes. Suddenly got full of myself. You moved, just good enough. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? This meeting is adjourned now.
Okay.